Okay, I'm not going to be able to get through this entire topic because of time limitations at YouTube, so on the screen there's 3 URLs. Those URLs will give references to points of time in Mormon history. 2 of them are from respected universities. Another one of them is from a Mormon research website. And I'm sure Mormons would call it anti-Mormon, but you can go to the universities, you can go to the historical references, and you can find these facts out for yourself. You don't have to rely on any particular reference. So to get into it, it is true that in Mormonism there's been 2 sides to racism. Before Brigham Young, during Joseph Smith's presidency as Mormon prophet, he did ordain Elijah Abel into the Mormon priesthood. And so he did show signs of being anti-racist. Joseph Smith, made other racist comments, but he did have a sign of being tolerant or even welcoming to some blacks. And so, this is contrasted by Joseph Smith's testimony in 1845, January 2nd. You can find this in History of the Church, Volume 5, page 21, and all the way through 218. You can see other references here, but it's Joseph Smith's quote is saying, "Had I anything to do with the Negro, I would confine them by strict law to their own species." So he was, he had racist tendencies, although he did have some kind tendencies as well. So before Brigham Young, there was a partial acceptance of blacks in the Mormon Church. After Brigham Young, there was not. It was not Joseph Smith that instituted the priesthood ban on black people. It was Brigham Young. To contrast this, we can see the RLDS Church never banned blacks from the priesthood. The RLDS Church, the reorganized church of the LDS, was started by Joseph Smith's wife, Joseph Smith's son, Joseph Smith Jr. III, and as well as a couple of hand-picked apostles that Joseph Smith ordained himself. That church was started. It did not have anything to do with polygamy. It did not have anything to do with racism. On contrary, though, Brigham Young did. And we can read in www.media.utah.edu, and I've already provided this link on the screen by now. It says the Brigham Young party that arrived in the Salt Lake Valley in June 1847 included 3 African Americans. Names are Green Flake, Oscar Crosby, and Hark Lay. These men were slaves of Southern Mormons who sent them ahead to prepare help for the arrival of the Mormon caravans that were to follow. In 1850, there were approximately 60 blacks residing in the Utah Territory. The majority were slaves living in the Salt Lake, Davis, and Utah counties. Although slavery was not sanctioned by law until 1852, the religiously homogeneous community accepted the servile status of the majority of black residents. Slavery officially ended in 1862 when the Utah State Congress abolished slavery in the Utah Territories. In the territories, that is. By 1890s, a small black community had numbers sufficient to establish their own churches, political organizations, newspaper, and social fraternal groups. Both Trinity African Methodist Episcopal and Calvary Missionary Baptist churches have continued to maintain their historical roles in addressing the secular as well as spiritual needs of the state's black communities. African American ministers continue to work together alongside other leaders in the black communities to address the needs of their people. When the noted black educator Booker T. Washington visited Salt Lake City in 1913, he gave a special lecture at Calvary Baptist Church for a local African American community. So you can see the contrast where Brigham Young banned blacks in the priesthood, banned blacks from attaining temple ordinances in the LDS Church, and also banned blacks from, going to the highest level of the Mormon heaven. And there's 6 levels. Blacks couldn't get to the highest level because they needed the temple stuff and all that other Mormon hoodoo guru stuff. So, we can also see a lot of other quotes from Mormon leaders. Brigham Young said in, Journal of Discourses, Volume 10, page 110, he said, "Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes blood with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. the nations of the earth have transgressed every law that God has given. They have changed the ordinances and broken every covenant made with the fathers. And they are like a hungry man that dreameth that he eateth, and he awaketh, and behold, that he is empty. Brigham Young went on and on. I mean, there's hundreds of quotes you can see on Brigham Young addressing racism. You can see these quotes at www.ils.unc.edu, and I'll provide the entire reference on the screen, obviously. You can see some history here at i4m.org, I believe. January 23rd, 1852, Brigham Young instructs Utah legislature to legalize slavery because, quote, we must be in slavery. February 5th, 1852, Brigham Young announces the policy of denying the priesthood to all those black African ancestry, even, quote, if there were never was a prophet or apostle of Jesus Christ spoke it before, because, quote, Negroes are the children of old Cain. Any man having one drop of the seed of Cain in him cannot hold the priesthood, unquote. Contrary to Joseph Smith's example in authorizing the ordination of Elijah Abel, this is the LDS policy for the next 126 years. In October 1863, Brigham Young prophesies to General Conference, quote, we will present this, will the present struggle of the Civil War free the slaves? No. And men will be called to judgment for the way that they have treated the Negro. The 13th Amendment legally ends slavery shortly after in 1865. So, there's a lot of contrary information in Mormonism. Joseph Smith taught against racism. Brigham Young taught for racism. Brigham Young instituted anti-interracial mixing after a Mormon black man and a Mormon white woman got married together, and it infuriated Brigham Young. And of course, this is also history, and I've posted links to that as well. But you can see this contrast. In Utah, there was non-racist churches, the Methodists, the Baptists, and so forth and so on. And then there was the racist church, which contrasted these other churches. The racist church was the Mormon church. We can see it all throughout, Mormon scripture, the Book of Mormon, the Book of Moses. It goes all through, their scripture. So it shows me that Joseph Smith, kind of waned on the idea. I quoted him earlier in saying, that he would keep, the Negro race confined to their own species. That's also what it basically says in the Book of Mormon and the Book of Moses, all throughout the two books. So, there's no doubt to me that there's a major contrast. Mormons will say, no way, it wasn't our church, we weren't racist. Look, there was a black man, baptized and ordained in the Mormon church, Elijah Abel. He was, priesthood holder and such. Yes, that's true. I agree. And there was a time where Mormonism was not as racist. But after 1844, when Joseph Smith passed away, Mormonism was most certainly racist. And that can be illustrated by, Mormon leaders that held slaves, as I quoted from media.utah.edu, where it says that, the first men to arrive in Utah were black slaves that were owned by LDS leaders from the South. So, there's no doubt that that there was not only racism of the ban of blacks holding the priesthood in the Mormon church, but in other institutions, in government, where there was a ban against interracial marriage in 1888. The Mormon government that, has always been there in the legislature banned interracial marriages. Mormonism also banned blacks from the priesthood. Mormonism had many, very ignorant, very racist quotes from LDS prophets and apostles towards racist conversations and issues. So, you can check out the links that I've had on the screen here. I've left them up so that you guys, if you're interested in context and sources, you can look those things up. And that's about all I've got.